Hey, can I also say this is the first time we've been back in a very, very long time, and I'm already upset with Spencer.
And it's fine. But welcome back to the
We're
show
vibing.
requirement, Harry Potter podcast, the first episode of this season. That I don't know what number season we're on. 8?
It was season 7, bro.
7.
Season 7.
That's right. I remember because Fast and Furious.
The
7,
number
that's
of
how I was reminding
completion.
myself. Which is where Fast and Furious should have ended, so it all goes really well together. Just throwing out hot takes, I guess. But welcome to the first episode. I'm back. I'm Spencer. I'm joined by my co-host David, who really is excited to be here today.
I love
Abby
it.
Tooley and Cole Harris.
Sorry,
all 4 of us together, and we need the whole crew tonight because we are doing the long-anticipated, asked for from you guys, conclusion counterpart of the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, but for the Hermione Granger series we did about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, give or take.
Yeah.
So a few caveats. We're not going to be summarizing the first 2 parts because we don't have time. I started writing this thing kind of as a joke with Cole, and then it took off into its own thing, and so we don't have time to go over all the details of the last 2. But if you haven't, this will make very little sense to you. The first episode is called "What If Harry Potter Was in Slytherin," the Hermione Granger series Part 1. And then the second episode is titled The Hermione Granger Series Part 2. They're both from March of 2022. So there you go. You can go find them.
Well, probably what I'll do even then is I'll take those and I'll upload them heading into this release.
Yeah.
So it could be on YouTube for
the YouTube people. Yes.
For the YouTube people, because the YouTube people, I mean, was big.
That was in the pre-YouTube era.
Yeah. The second to last episode of last season, we hit 1.1K in views for that episode. A million.
Billion.
And then our finale, I mean, it was still like 429. So like our podcast is, we're popping a little bit. So if we can get people caught up on this series, which I honestly think is probably our best produced, our best
flagship
episodes. Yeah. I mean, when Spencer sits down and he writes stuff and he doesn't spoil it, it's great stuff.
I really haven't spoiled it, David. I haven't spoiled much. And I do want you to call this Hermione Granger and the Cursed Child asterisk. I stole that idea from Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, which hasn't come out yet, but the real title will be revealed as we go through the story. And so, David, as editor-in-chief, you need to call it Hermione Granger and the Cursed Child. Also, because people need to know what it is.
Got it.
Moving through my caveats. Unlike the first 2 parts, this one is very loosely based off Harry Potter and the Cursed Child because the other we're in a different place now. We're in an alternate universe. So some of you listeners will love that fact if you don't like Cursed Child. Some of you may enjoy the journey into the unknown. But if I'm not upsetting some people, it's not really an adaptation of the Cursed Child. Like last time, we're doing voices. Cole was not with us last time, so Cole's jumping in. For the host, I will be narrating and reading a couple of characters, very few this time, in red. I'm still reading for Ron. That's pretty much it. David will be reading in green again, Abs in blue, and Cole will be joining as a new addition to the cast, and you'll be reading in yellow because you're a Hufflepuff.
Yay!
Cole has some interesting characters. He'll find out.
Oh boy!
Just have fun, Cole. And I'm not going to explain the rest of that. I wouldn't say this takes the form of a play. It's similar to the last ones, but we will be separating it into acts so we can pause, give thoughts, discuss. And I didn't make this clear. If you're new, go back and listen to the other ones. But again, David, Abby, and Cole do not know anything.
We don't know.
They
anything.
just got.
Well, I know
this
one
script.
thing.
Lies.
And Cole knows one thing. Cole knows how it ends.
I know nothing.
Cole knows how we get there. He doesn't know how we get there.
I don't know how we get
definitely
there. I
knows
just
the
know how
end.
it ends.
All right. Are we ready?
Yes.
I'm ready. Let's do this.
All right.
Cue the spooky music.
It's not spooky music. It's happy music.
Right.
Bells rang and train horns blew, but nothing could outplay the mass of people that filled King's Cross Station on September the 1st, 2017. Most days, businessmen and women filled the station getting to work or heading on trips across London and Europe. But on this September the 1st, there were also many, many families, and some of them were strange. Not strange in the sense of how they dressed, although on September 1st of old, there were many in long black robes, or if they weren't in robes, they were in outfits such as pinstripe tops and pajama bottoms, sandals and suits, and more. That tradition had disappeared, no doubt to the education from the Muggle-born Minister of Magic, who led her daughter through the station that very day. One of the many victories Hermione Granger had in her tenure as minister, which of course the papers overlooked in favor of focusing on her personal life. But she ignored them well enough. Now, the main peculiarities which persisted often had to do with the items these families brought. Large trunks rode the tops of their carts, topped with items such as broomsticks, cauldrons, lard bird cages, and sometimes other animals as well. In this case, the daughter of the Minister of Magic had a basket striding atop her trunk in which sat a sweet, bandy-legged, slightly graying cat chewing on a dog toy. He had never been quite the same since spending a year in Australia.
You'd better take good care of Crookshanks, Andromeda. Regardless of what people say, his days strolling the grounds looking for Animagus wizards are behind him. He'll be perfectly happy in Gryffindor Tower by the fire. But what if I'm not in Gryffindor, Mom? What if I'm in Slytherin? Like Dad.
Andromeda Granger had said it without meeting her mother's eyes. She knew her mother didn't like talking about Dad and hadn't, if she could help it, for the last 6 years. Then you better not get on the train home.
Ron!
Ron and Leanne Weasley had arrived with their son Barney, another first year at Hogwarts who was the spitting image of his father. Along with Barney came Katie Weasley, a fourth year who had her mother's black hair paired with her father's freckles, and Hugo Weasley, who was 3 years away from having a cart and trunk of his own. Only joking, Drum, said Ron hastily. Katie made it home all right, although grandmother voted for disownment.
As if. I'm very proud. A badger like her mother and a seeker just like Aunt Katie.
Katie smiled despite her mother's happiness and rushed through the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Barney was hesitant. Ron came alongside him with a hand on his back and said, "Together." And they rushed through. Hermione came alongside Andromeda in turn, and they rushed through. After they passed into King's Cross Station in view of the Scarlet Hogwarts Express, Ron muttered to Hermione, "You know, he wants to talk to you. You should give him a chance. He thinks you should get to know your own."
Don't push it, Ron.
But
I'll be along in a moment. I'll think about it. I need to speak to Andromeda for a second.
she pulled her daughter aside to be behind one of the pillars in the station. She suddenly remembered spotting a Slytherin boy with untidy black hair and spectacles talking to Ron's dad at this very pillar over 20 years ago.
Listen, about the sorting. I'm sorry. I know you don't like talking about Dad. I shouldn't have said anything.
Emotions flooded her head, but Hermione kept her composure only like parents can. Hermione met her daughter's eyes, which she found difficult. Although her daughter had brown, curly, bushy hair like her mother, she had those all too familiar gray eyes.
About the sorting.
She continued.
If you're sorted into Slytherin, then Slytherin will have gained a great witch. Andromeda, you are named after one of the sweetest, kindest, bravest witches your father and I know, and she was in Slytherin. You see her every other Christmas. Great Auntie Tonks was in Great Auntie Tonks was in Slytherin? Yes, and she made many friends in other houses too, including your late great-uncle Ted.
Andromeda felt comforted and boarded the express. Her mother ran alongside the train, blowing kisses and encouragement until the train sank into the northern horizon. Andromeda turned and began walking down the train cars looking for her childhood friend Barney. A few compartments down, she found him, sitting across from a blonde-haired, lanky boy of 14. He shared her silver-gray eyes.
Barney, what is this?
Andromeda, it's good to see you.
Andromeda paused and then consented to hug her older brother, Sirius Malfoy.
Frick me.
Title card. Andromeda Granger and the Lost Prophecy. About halfway through the sorting ceremony, Professor Longbottom read,
Granger, Andromeda?
Andromeda sat on the stool. Professor Longbottom proceeded to place the old, slightly blackened wizard hat on her head. The hat said,
Very curious. A heritage of 2 houses, yes. But 2 incredible members of their history. Not Slytherin, eh? Well, better be Gryffindor!
A long table full of red emblemed robes raised a ruckus in applause. The Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff tables clapped politely. Katie from Hufflepuff whooped. The Slytherin table was mostly silent, except for one. Andromeda made eye contact first with her older brother, who was standing in applause, smiling at his sister. Andromeda suddenly had second thoughts about her wish. She had never known what house Sirius was in. Barney was also sorted into Gryffindor, as well as his cousin Hestia Thomas, which softened the blow of Andromeda's fear she would not have friends in her house. Andromeda had a wonderful time at Hogwarts over those next few days. She loved the classes she was engaging in, but loved more the beautiful grounds of Hogwarts. She had made many friends and spent lots of time with Barney and Hestia. Whenever she had questions about her classes, many a time she would find her brother Sirius. He was usually cooped up in the library pouring into books, just like he did when they all lived together. Andromeda learned how to fly a broom. She took to it well and was encouraged by Oliver Wood II to join the team her second year, brewed potions under Professor Stamp, levitated objects under the instruction of her charm professor, Professor Diggory, and observed all kinds of magical fungi under the instruction of her head of house, Professor Longbottom, whom she had to remember not to call Uncle Neville. Andromeda's first Christmas home from Hogwarts was a skiing trip with her mom and grandparents Granger. She always loved going on trips like this with her family when they were together, but her mom hadn't done anything like this in the 6 years since they separated. She liked to think Mum was on the mend. On Christmas morning, Andromeda came down to many gifts: a new set of goggles and skis from her grandparents, and a knitted maroon sweater with a giant A from her mother. But she was surprised to find a few extra presents under their tree. She opened the first one, slowly. It was a copy of Quidditch Through the Ages from her brother Sirius. She smiled, but her breaths drew closer together. She knew who the other boxes must be from. She unwrapped the second package. Inside it appeared to be a card floating in the middle of the box. She opened it to find the handwriting of her father.
To my beloved daughter, this belonged to a friend of your mother and me in school. He was very brave. Use it well.
She pulled out a cloak of invisibility. She swung it around her shoulders and looked to where her body should have been, but was now completely invisible. She put the whole cloak over her head and took out the third long-shaped package to the deck away from her mother's prying eyes. As much as she would find presents from her estranged father and brother frustrating, nothing would set her off more than finding a gift from her other grandparents. She unwrapped a brand new, polished Nimbus 2020. Andromeda returned to Hogwarts, tired but thankful for time with family. She arrived in the Great Hall the Sunday before classes because her mother had to return to work. She met Barney and Katie in the Great Hall, who were joined by Sirius in an unmistakable, hand-knitted emerald green jumper with an emblazoned S on the front. She knew this wouldn't fix everything, but at the end of her first year at Hogwarts, Andromeda met up with Sirius before hopping on the train. He handed her a special mirror.
Hold it up.
She did so. Instead of seeing her own face in the reflection, she saw her brother, like a wizard photograph. smiling at someone on his left and laughing a little. She looked over, and Sirius was laughing at her, holding up a mirror of his own.
It's a two-way mirror. Now, if you need me, you can call me through these. You know our father doesn't keep a muggle phone around. It won't be long until you see me again anyway.
Why is that?
Andromeda asked with a wry smile.
Oh, something the Weasleys and I have cooked up. Don't worry about it.
A couple of months later, George and Ron, Barney and Sirius sneak Andromeda out in the night and take her to Ron and Leanne's house, the Foxhole. Andromeda loved visiting the Foxhole. On top of a hill between the burrow and the Lovegood's house, to Muggle eyes it appeared only as a long one-story cottage, but underneath it expanded to many floors below with gardens, circular windows, lots of natural light, reading nooks, and plants everywhere. No wonder Katie felt so at home at Hogwarts. Andromeda didn't understand why her mother was not frustrated about her leaving. Oh, Leanne wrote her an owl about it a week ago and fessed up, Ron admitted.
Your mother and I didn't want to take the fun out of it. She'll be by for dinner tomorrow.
Hermione did come by for dinner and spoke with Sirius. While Andromeda played wizard chess with Barney, she couldn't help but noticing her mother exchanging many, many books and telling stories with her son. Them reconnecting brought her hope, and she knew Sirius would have that hope too. Draco came by for a few days after Hermione left. He bonded with Andromeda quickly, showing her the finer bits of Chaser he had learned. Ron, Draco, Katie, Andromeda, Barney, and Ginny played three-a-side Quidditch. Ginny showing them all that while she was a sports journalist now, she had still had all that skill that made her a pro in the first place. That night, a Patronus in the form of an otter swam in a swirl toward the window. The otter gave Ron and Draco a serious but familiar gaze and nodded toward the front garden. Draco and Ron followed it. The two men stepped back in, and without a word, Draco turned to Sirius.
Stay here. Look after your sister.
Sweetheart, I'll be back soon, Ron told Leanne. Leanne left their kiss with an expression that understood it was going to be a long night. Draco and Ron threw their cloaks on and walked down the front path. The moment they stepped out the front gate, they both turned and disapparated with a collective somewhere in Little Whinging. In a neighborhood with uniform houses, well-tended gardens, undoubtedly a neighborhood watch, and with street lamps at very close intervals, two men strode into view from a nearby alleyway. The lamps went out, one after another, as two men walked down the street. They reached the end of the street as the blonde-haired man said,
Ron, this is where Harry Potter grew up. Little Whinging.
Oh yeah, with his horrible aunt and uncle? Hagrid told me about it years ago. As the men approached the end of the cul-de-sac toward the house already dark, they drew their wands in unison. They waved them as they approached a mirage barrier and stepped forward into the yard of a brightly lit house, with flashes coming from cameras inside. They nodded the two law enforcement wizards manning the door and stepped inside.
Another raid. Them again?
Yes, at least we believe so. Can't imagine what they keep looking for at all these places.
Hermione replied.
First, the cottage by the sea, then the house in Godric's Hollow, then here.
Do you think Hogwarts?
The Forbidden Forest? Yes, Ron, I do. But this time, we caught one of them. We need to see what they know first.
We caught one? How?
The Muggle mother, so brave. Only her and her kid at home. He jinxed her, but she managed to club him with a broom. Knocked him out before Cattermole could get in.
Alfred Cattermole?
Yes. He is our best at impersonating Muggle police officers. I've had him stationed here for days, just in case.
Draco filled in as they walked upstairs.
The Dursleys moved away years ago, but I had a feeling. Anyway, I'm guessing his sneakoscope went off and he went to investigate.
Yes, exactly. Just in time, too. Are you two ready?
Draco and Ron nodded.
Okay. Cattermole, the door. Thank you.
The young man was no older than 18 or 19. He was gagged, tied, and hung upside down by an invisible force the three of them recognized as the Levi Corpus spell. He had light brown hair, but as he saw his interrogators approach, he started turning red and squirming, and when he did so, his hair turned bright red as well.
Teddy?
Untie him, right now! Draco held out his arm to stop Ron.
Wait! He has to be Imperious. But why haven't they released him?
Draco looked at Teddy, a young man he was technically godfather to, with a strange, airy curiosity, like how a young boy watches a fire writhe and flow in the air.
Why are you controlling Teddy Lupin?
He asked calmly as he removed the gag.
The prophecy must be fulfilled.
Teddy was foaming at the mouth, repeating the phrase over and over. Ron was clearly grossed out. Release him, Draco. Get us Teddy back.
Not yet. He clearly wants us to tell us something first.
The Dark Lord will rise again!
More sympathizers.
Hermione shook her head as the mind-controlled Teddy writhed in his magical bonds and continued yelling.
But he's gone. Very gone. They never understand.
Neither can live while the other survives.
This perked their collective interest.
How did you...
We will bring back the Dark Lord. The boy who lived will be our new champion.
At this, Teddy's face slipped over, apparently fainted. Hermione waved her wand silently, and Ron and Draco caught him. I'll take him to St. Mungo's, said Ron. He tossed the deluminator to Draco, and he took Teddy from the room. The two remaining figures stood quite still in the room, thinking. Neither of them said anything until Ron and Teddy disapparated in the yard.
Are the Muggles...
Alive, yes. At St. Mungo's. They'll be all right.
Muttered Hermione. The shock of what had just transpired shook the both of them, but it was eclipsed by the history Draco and Hermione shared. Many doubted Hermione's appointment of Draco Malfoy to the head of Auror office. Doubts circled Draco all the way back to his appointment to Auror after Voldemort fell. Hermione, Ron, and the surviving Order of the Phoenix members all vouched for him. His performance spoke for itself. Like Moody of olden days, Draco could think as they do, but not deceive himself. Understand, but stand against. Hermione's number one reason for appointing her ex-husband as head of the Auror office was Draco never needed to work. His vast inheritance made it so his family hadn't had formal jobs for generations. Draco worked for the greater good because he wholeheartedly believed it was the right thing to do. She knew he would take the job because he desired to fix things between the two of them, still, but she was impressed that he kept himself together well and had the mental fortitude to not bring that up.
They must know he was the last Horcrux,
Draco said finally.
How, though, Draco? How?
That doesn't matter. They know. We just need to figure out what their plan is.
Hermione sighed, the hours of not sleeping getting to her. She straightened herself up anyway.
You clean up here. I have to go. Minerva and I need to speak to Majoran.
Then they parted ways. Again. And that is the end of Act 1. Thoughts, guys?
Cue music.
So I can get a break.
David has a lot of thoughts.
I don't have any. It's one thought. It's just one thought.
You're not intrigued by the storyline?
I'm intrigued by the story, but I think it would be so much better if you wouldn't have catered to the small 1% of Draco Miney fans.
It's not even
whatever they're
catering at
called.
this point because
It's catering.
I've already set myself in this corner.
You sold out.
So I'm
You sold out for the money.
I am in the corner, and instead of being stuck in the corner, I'm just like riding the corner and just keeping going around the circle.
It's not even a corner anymore. It's a circular room.
It's a circular room.
Not an actual circle, but more like a freaky circle.
Freaky circle. That's what it is. That's
10 out of 10 reference. Cole.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I have turned the corner into a circle so that I can continue riding. You're welcome. You wanted an ending.
Aside from that, you could have just said
Aside
they
from
broke up,
that.
like later, but that's neither here or there. I think the rest of the story though does have me intrigued.
What do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going on?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a time turner thing going on here, or if because Harry had the option to live or to not live, and maybe he's changed his mind now, and maybe they're trying to bring him back or whatever. And I don't know. I'm very interested though. I'm invested. aside from the weird Hermione Draco stuff, I'm fine. This is very interesting.
Well, let's just keep going because it's just gonna keep getting crazy.
Yeah.
Do it in the SpongeBob voice.
Nope, don't got it in me today.
6 months later.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, talk like SpongeBob.
What were you thinking?
SpongeBob, where he does the laugh.
That's gonna get clipped too. That's gonna be clipped.
6 months later.
There you go.
That I can do. The lift of the Ministry of Magic clattered downward with its 2 occupants. One was clearly the son of the other. He had his same light blonde hair, but with noticeably less gray/white to it. The lift doors opened for the head of the Auror office and his father, and a disembodied voice said,
Level 9, Department of Mysteries.
Draco said quietly to his father,
You sure it was Runcorn?
Yes, Draco. Not the sole conspirator, no, but he certainly has been involved from the start. He missed the ministry from which the Dark Lord was over it all. The magic is might and all that. Sorely mistaken, as we all were.
We can't hold him much longer without proof.
Hopefully this call will give us what we seek. We have to be patient and work diligently.
Draco agreed, but didn't want his father to know that. He still held on to bits of the angst of his youth, while his brain was hardwired somewhere in the back to say, "Yes, father." He now had the ability to restrain that notion. Hermione was there, waiting. She did not meet the gaze of Lucius, but spoke directly to Draco and Ron as if he were not present.
A word in the hallway, please.
Once they stepped in the hallway, she said,
Ernie's theory is that they were after the Time Turners.
But we destroyed all of them, right? Draco shifted ever so slightly, not enough for the other two to notice.
Yes, of course, but it's clear what their goal is.
Is it?
Ron.
They want to go back and bring Harry Potter back to the present.
Why Harry, though? Why not bring back you-know-who himself?
Because Voldemort lost. I killed him.
They're fanatics, Ron. They see Potter as the one who couldn't kill. Or he as the one who he couldn't kill. Twice. If they know about the Horcrux, neither can live while the other survives. They believe one of them has to be living or the world will never be made right again.
But how?
They could always bring Harry back through the Horcrux, like the diary almost took away my son here so many years ago in the Chamber of Secrets.
Lucius said as he stood quietly in the doorway. They can't though anyway. There are no time turners left. Right? Ron asked imploringly.
Right.
Then that's settled. During December, Hermione wrote to Andromeda informing her of something that excited her. Sirius was going to the Grangers' Christmas. Andromeda was going to her father's, but where exactly was that? Andromeda had never met her father's parents. She was too young at the time to fully understand, but Sirius explained in the library that the grandparents Malfoy originally hadn't approved of their parents' marriage, and not the children by proxy. But their dad didn't lose contact with them, and that was part of why their parents didn't work out. Grandma and Granddad had a change of heart over the years, though, and even were helping their father with an Auror case. They really turned it around. They had taken in Sirius and Draco without hesitation, and now they wanted to get to know Andromeda. Andromeda came off the Hogwarts Express and waved to her mother and Sirius, who waved back. Their mother and father made eye contact. Her father, Draco, gave a gentle nod, and they turned away.
You brought your broom, I hope?
Yes, I did.
Great. Granddad wants to see you fly. Please, put on the invisibility cloak I gave you. I trust you've been taking good care of it for me?
I have. It's wonderful. What about you, though?
Oh, I don't need a cloak to be invisible.
And Draco performed a disillusionment charm to Andromeda's awe.
Ask Professor Diggory how to do that when you get back. Stay close to me.
He whipped out his own Nimbus 2020.
What? I couldn't let them get you one without getting one myself.
They laughed and took off. They descended from high in the clouds to a long street of lacrosse hedges in the country.
We can take our cloaks off now. Here.
Draco handed his daughter a tiny little scroll with what she originally thought was her father's handwriting, but there was slightly more loops and a slant that gave it a more feminine feel.
The location of Malfoy Manor is 44th Charles Street, Wiltshire.
Andromeda looked up at a lane offshoot in the hedge that had appeared, and beyond it a large, beautiful metal gate, and beyond that a large white manor.
This, my dear, is where your dad grew up. Come on.
Andromeda had a wonderful time at Malfoy Manor. Granddad Lucius clapped at Andromeda's flying skills and poked fun at Draco the whole time. Grandmother Sissy introduced her to the resident peacocks by name, and they enjoyed dinner every night in the kitchen. They had a large dining hall, but they didn't like to use it. Andromeda was too afraid to ask why. One night, Draco was away at work. He arrived late with, surprisingly, Ron Weasley. "Is it here? You're certain?"
Yes. And it's not going anywhere.
Andromeda gave a loud to Sirius through their mirror. Sirius looked appalled as he was discussing the Muggle book club he went to with their mother, when Andromeda explained in a whisper,
"I've got to go. I'll tell you later."
She threw on her father's trusty cloak, wincing at the fact that she was using it to spy on her own father, and followed them. Upstairs, in a corner, after many clicks and whirs from various doors, they arrived to a back room and were standing together looking at an old cabinet. "Draco, if I had a galleon for every time I told you, you've outdone yourself."
You may have a shot at my family's inheritance. All right now?
A soft thud sound was made. Draco opened the doors to find a small necklace with an hourglass in the middle. "Blimey, Draco."
Yes. And it must remain in its hiding place. They can't know it's here. That's half of why the Fidelius charm.
"We have to tell the minister. Hermione ought to know."
I can't. It's safe here. No one's going to find it. Let's leave it that way.
"Have it your way, but I still disagree with you." They walked out, and Andromeda barely breathed as they passed. 9 months later. Andromeda went to King's Cross with her mother for her 3rd year, Sirius's 7th year. Her mother didn't mention it, but as she was Minister of Magic, she knew almost every face of Ministry employees and greeted many of them as they passed. As Andromeda had visited her mother at work many times, she couldn't help but notice she greeted Seamus and Dean, Ernie, and a few other members of magical law enforcement and Auror office that she usually didn't see near King's Cross, unless they were with their own children, which they weren't. Andromeda also noticed Kingsley Shacklebolt, Professor Longbottom, and Professor Diggory on the other side of the barrier of platform 9 3/4, something she was also confused to see. Kingsley being long retired as minister, and the other two already being at Hogwarts. Turns out, as she learned from Barney later, that Kingsley had graciously agreed to Headmistress McGonagall's offer to teach Defense Against the Dark Arts that year. As he was overqualified in most every aspect, Andromeda thought that was a wonderful idea, but Sirius was skeptical. At lunch the 3rd day, Andromeda received an owl post, knowing it must be from her mother giving her more tips on her newest set of classes, or a reminder to see Hagrid for tea, which she already did weekly. She was shocked to find that it was from Sirius. Why couldn't he just talk to her in person?
Andromeda, meet me in the Great Hall at 8 o'clock. Please, bring along Dad's old cloak and this coin. S.
She twirled the coin in her fingers. It looked almost like any other galleon. She twirled it until she found the oddly specific marks on the sides. At the end of those marks, ever so tiny, she noticed a tiny OS at the end. Andromeda found her brother at 8. They slipped under the cloak together, him in the lead, and they took off. She thought for a moment he was going to take her down to the dungeons where Slytherin's house was. Her mother had told her a few stories, but he went up. Up and up they went until they arrived in the middle of the 7th floor corridor, facing a blank wall opposite the horrific painting of Barnabas the Barmy attempting to train trolls to ballerina dance. Sirius slipped out from under the cloak and began to pace back and forth.
You have to think very carefully on what you need. In this case, a secret place for Sirius and his compatriots to meet away from prying eyes. Ah, yes. Here we go.
Andromeda gasped as the doors appeared from nowhere. Sirius smiled and opened the door for her. Andromeda stepped into what easily could have been a massive library, a large cylinder room with bookshelves going up and up, and a fireplace at the bottom lighting the room along with multiple candles in the air, like the Great Hall 7 floors down. Squashy armchairs of green, gold, red, and blue littered the room, but you noticed a large room to the right of the cylinder library, which was a wide open floored area with training dummies.
What is this place?
Welcome to the room of requirement, Andromeda. In this specific form, the meeting place of the Order of the Serpent.
That's the end of Act 2. Any thoughts in the medium before Act 3?
I'm gonna take a wild guess here.
A highly educated wish?
Maybe.
He doesn't know what he's referencing. Cole.
Oh, I know. That's why I said it.
Anyway,
I don't. I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm probably going to be very wrong, but this is just what I'm thinking of right now. The Order of the Serpents are evil. They're about to do some really bad things.
We're about to see some crazy crap.
Abby, do you agree?
Evil, some might say.
Is Sirius evil?
I don't
Or is he
think
just
so.
a nice guy who reads books?
Well, now when you phrase it that way,
When you
sounds
phrase it that
suspicious.
way, now it seems like that's exactly what's about to happen.
That was a loaded question, Spencer.
Yeah.
I won't say the true answer because it's actually more nuanced than either of those.
More nuanced.
I think
Clearly, it's more
I need
nuanced.
to control myself. I've said
Yeah.
nuanced like 40 times this week. I have a problem. I have a serious problem. Anyway,
Serious problem.
Serious problem.
Hopefully Cole's
and I are
coming back
vibing
because
right
he has a line coming up.
Getting some water.
Water.
Well, I'm gonna kick off Act 3, and he'll catch up. He'll be fine. There he is. Act 3. Andromeda scanned the room. There were faces she did know, and there were faces that were new to her. Katie from Hufflepuff was there, Katie Weasley, with what Andromeda could tell was an equally confused Barney from Gryffindor. Hestia and Henry were also there from Gryffindor. Sirius's best mates from Slytherin, Stephen and Liam were present, and she was introduced to Dan from Hufflepuff and Michael and Flo from Ravenclaw.
It's the most Hufflepuff
Okay,
name
so
I've
now
ever
we
heard.
know. Now we know everyone. What is this group for? Barney asked.
Well,
Dan started.
It started with Yaxley.
Stephen said.
Damien Yaxley, the one whose father was a Death Eater?
Yeah. He left last year. He found a memory in the headmistress office in the Pensieve. He bragged about it to a bunch of Slytherins. Rumor is he broke his father out, and they're on the run with what's left of who's cronies.
Stephen explained how they had overheard Damien in the Slytherin common room telling everyone who would hear about how he ventured into Headmistress's Pensieve, how he had seen Dumbledore tell Snape that Harry was carrying Voldemort's last Horcrux, and how Damien said he and his father were convinced bringing Harry back was the key to bringing back the Dark Lord. Sirius said,
the craziest bit is they were right. Well, they were wrong, but they were right.
He added quickly as Andromeda's jaw dropped.
The prophecy still holds true, Andromeda. Think, what would a world be like if Harry Potter had lived?
When Andromeda didn't respond, he continued.
I've read books and books on it and talked to Mom and Dad.
Sirius said as he held up a stack of books and paste.
Harry Potter had special abilities, parcel tongue. He could read Voldemort's thoughts. Some say he knew the future, prophecy, and all to boot. If we save Harry Potter, Voldemort may not come back at all. If Voldemort did come back, imagine how much faster the Second Wizarding World War would be. A year? Months? Weeks?
I still think you're underestimating Voldemort.
Katie said sardonically.
I think you're underestimating Harry Potter. The pride of Slytherin. The boy who lived. The chosen one.
I thought they said that about Mom.
But that's not who the prophecy was for, Andromeda. It was for the one who Voldemort marked as his equal. Voldemort tried to kill Harry Potter.
Stephen added.
We formed this group because we believe it is our mission to stop Yaxley and save Harry Potter the right way. Not drag him into our present, just save him from his fate, then return to a better world.
How do we time travel back to save him, though? Barney asked. A long pause ensued. Lots of looks passed between all of them.
Time turners, Barney.
Katie said
gone.
finally.
Oh,
Gone?
Destroyed. Battle of Department of Mysteries during our parents' 5th year.
Sirius concluded.
What did they look like?
Hang on. I've got a book on them someplace here.
He trotted around a bit, climbing shelves, while Maybe mouthed crazy to Andromeda behind his back. Andromeda laughed, but Stephen and Liam gave Katie a come on, don't be like that look.
Here.
Sirius pulled out a book and slid out some pages that looked like diagrams. He showed the wide necklace with an hourglass piece in the middle.
Hang on. Dad has one of these.
Andromeda, don't be silly. He doesn't have one of these.
No, he does.
And Andromeda explained what she had seen at Malfoy Manor over Christmas.
Wait. This is it. This is the break we need.
Sirius,
Katie
no.
stepped forward.
I'm so sorry. Sirius, no.
I thought you were on board.
When this was a pipe dream, when all the time turners were gone, this is madness.
We can save Harry Potter. What other choice do we have?
We could leave it where it is.
Suggested Flo from Ravenclaw.
Good one.
I'm serious. It's safe where it is. Yaxley and his blokes won't be able to find it because it's so well hidden.
Right. But what about the other side of the vanishing cabinet?
Who said?
It's a vanishing cabinet, Dan. 2 sides. My dad has one because it's the one he was forced to repair years ago. He must have bought it from Borgin and Burks to keep it safe, or keep Hogwarts safe. It helps you travel between it and its pair, which, if I'm not mistaken, is in this room.
The others walked out, but before Sirius could start pacing, Katie said,
Let's call it a night, Sirius. It's safe and we'll all be in trouble. You're a prefect, after all.
Sirius begrudgingly agreed, and they all parted ways. Andromeda had barely changed into her night clothes when she heard a psst from her brother in the two-way mirror.
You don't think I'm crazy, do you?
I don't know. It could save a lot of lives if Potter was as powerful as they say. It could not.
They met the next week on the same night, but this time Sirius talked them through the same specific instructions. They needed the room of requirement for a place to hide something. They entered a room that made them all shudder. Ashes were everywhere, mountains of them, and among the ashes were fireproof objects, a helmet here, a necklace there, mostly rubbish that was clearly hidden by students over centuries. Closer to the front of the room, there were new hidden things, a new cove of items that didn't look as worn as the ash-covered items.
It'll have to be older. This way. Looking for an old cabinet.
It didn't take them long to find the Malfoy Manor's sister cabinet, its twin. The time turner was not in there. They decided it must have been on the other side, and as she was there when her father used it, Andromeda was chosen to go. She stepped very tenderly into the cabinet.
I'll be right behind you,
Sirius said encouragingly.
All right. Harmonium Nectaria passes.
Like she imagined apparition, although she had not done it yet, or her occasions of using Floon powder, she was swirled into nothingness. Just when she could not hold her breath any longer, she landed in what felt like the place she just came from. She was standing on something. It was the time turner, in the safest place their father could think to hide it. The only people to truly be able to find it were the only people he didn't expect to go looking for it. She stepped out of the cabinet. The second her foot touched the floor, an ear-piercing scream erupted seemingly from nowhere, going in and out like a car alarm. Her father had set up alarm jinxes. Sirius stepped out quickly, and they looked at each other. Without hesitation, Sirius took the time turner and began configuring it. He threw the necklace around both their necks. Draco swung open the door and stopped in his tracks for a moment, confused to see his own kids together in his house. Then he saw Sirius turning the timepiece of the time turner.
Sirius, no, please don't. It's all right, Father. I know what I'm doing.
Draco rushed at them, and just as he reached out his hand, he stopped. and for a brief moment he was suspended mid-run before he reverse ran out of the room. Everything was in reverse. A different Sirius walked backwards inside the cabinet, the alarm scream silenced, Andromeda's twin left as well. Then the time started going back. Faster.
Close your eyes, Andromeda.
As she did so, the years were flying too fast to count. She was thankful to have her brother's guidance because she was so dizzy. A few moments later, they were standing in Malfoy Manor again.
We made it. Still got your invisibility cloak on you?
Yes.
Let's put it on and get out of here.
Malfoy Manor was notably less warm and much more formal than the one they had just entered and then quickly left. They snuck their way out noiselessly. Sirius pulled out a set of broomsticks seemingly from nowhere, and they took flight and flew for hours. Eventually, they reached Hogsmeade.
Where are we? I mean, when are we?
We are in June 1995. Harry Potter and our mom are going to enter the third task tonight, along with Victor Crumb and Fleur Delacour. We need to stop Harry from winning.
How?
The how is a little complicated, but I have some things that could help us.
He swung over his rucksack and reached his entire arm inside.
Undetectable extension charm. Got the idea from Mum. Learned it from Professor Diggory. Katie and I took a couple of months to work it out, but we reckon it did all right.
Sirius's rucksack included an array of useful items the Order of the Serpent had been securing for months. Sirius and Katie's broomsticks, a demiguy's hair invisibility cloak for Sirius, full sets of Hogwarts robe, a sneakoscope, extendable ears from Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, Peruvian instant darkness powder, and more were within the great depths of Sirius's bag. But what he pulled out was even more surprising. Sirius pulled out a Beauxbaton outfit in a size that was clearly too big for Hermione, and a Durmstrang outfit that was too large for Sirius. Along with those, he pulled out a large flask. Getting the hairs from Crumb and Fleur was quite difficult, not to mention drugging them and putting them away before the third task.
Sorry. Why didn't you bring Katie with you instead? She would impersonate Fleur much better.
Andromeda said in a French accent very much not her own.
There was no time. We had to act quickly. I knew the only way out of there was by using the time turner. And if we're gonna go back in time, we might as well go to our destination. Besides, Mom made us both take French in Muggle primary school.
Dad still made you go after?
I switched schools. But yes, every day.
Andromeda lost her brother, of course, as she went into the maze before him, as he went into the maze before her as Victor Crumb. She ran about trying to find Harry. As she hadn't lived through the event, the Order hadn't managed to figure out what Harry faced in the maze, and therefore what directions he went. On one of the many dead ends, she whipped around to see Crumb. Well, Sirius, but his eyes were white. He raised his wand and said,
Crucio!
Unequivocal, seemingly endless pain engulfed Andromeda. She screamed with Fleur's voice into the night until suddenly she heard the unified cry,
Stupefy! Oh.
The pain ended immediately as
might
Crumb.
line up.
The pain ended immediately as Crumb, who was secretly Sirius, flew over Andromeda and landed into the hedge behind her. She looked up to see, on an offshoot of one off-turn, Harry Potter, and a few steps behind him was her mother at 15 years old.
Oh, sorry I hit your boyfriend, Granger.
Shut up, Potter.
Hermione said in a joking retort.
Fleur, are you all right? Yes, we. I'm all right, I think.
For a second there, I thought, wow, I'm the best stunner in the world.
Well, you're not stunning anyone with that confidence. Come on, let's send red sparks and get out of here.
Before Fleur could come up with a reasonable excuse to leave Crumb in the game, she desperately didn't want to become separated from her brother. Hermione sent red sparks and Hermione sent green sparks.
Harry, the rules.
Gotta support the home team, Granger. Serpents for life.
Harry laughed and went on his way down the path he came from. Andromeda realized that Harry, despite his airy attitude, had doubled back when he heard her struggle with Crumb to save her.
Don't go that way. There's a Sphinx. I only just got by her. See you. Good luck.
Hermione said breathlessly and took off the way she came. Andromeda waited until her mother turned a corner, shivered off into the weirdness of the interaction, and took off after Harry. Harry was standing in front of the Sphinx. He was pacing, trying to figure out the riddle when Andromeda stunned him. He collapsed, she sent red sparks, and then went the opposite direction. She wasn't sure what to do next when Sirius, himself again, appeared next to her.
What?
No time. Quick, under the necklace. I'm already turning it.
She obeyed, and before long they were on the Quidditch pitch again, in the present. Sirius said,
Sorry, I'm freaking out. I'm figuring out what's going on. We had to save Harry and Mom, or we wouldn't exist. If Mom wins alone, she wouldn't survive.
You could have told me that part of the plan.
I told you to focus on Harry. It was my job to avoid the obstacles and win, and then to separate from the graveyard. But I wasn't counting on Barty Crouch Jr. I should have known he Imperious Crumb. It all makes sense.
I thought he Imperious Fleur.
Yes, but it was a spur-of-the-moment decision. He happened to use the Imperious Curse on Fleur that time. But the smallest chance could swing his decision the other way. The way you stood up when your name was called, maybe the way I did something, make sense?
But then what about... Isn't there some sort of problem?
A paradox, yes. But I already went back and solved that. Come on.
They reached the deserted corridor where they had drugged and hidden away Crumb. Suddenly, Sirius and Andromeda appeared and then vanished.
A warning, Jinx. If we fail, we go back and warn ourselves, but from a safe distance. I know when I received a light jelly leg, Jinx, I failed and need to return to the present. Return to the present, and when we all arrive, the other us disappears.
Andromeda looked extremely confused.
The 12 Laws of Traveling by Time Turner by Gerald Thimpsey. Took me months to get my hands on a copy, weeks to sift through, but we're covered.
They made a beeline to the room of requirement where the rest of the Order of the Serpent resided. The rest of their group was waiting for them, as Andromeda noticed was probably premeditated by Sirius and Katie. Sirius and Andromeda explained how they failed on the third task.
All right, then. Time to talk the second task,
said Katie. Why can't we just go back to the third task and try again? Barney asked.
Because we already went there. Got the gillyweed?
Yes, let's just go.
Andromeda didn't argue she was not going with. Katie was resourceful and trustworthy. Katie would veer Sirius from chaos more than she would. As they gathered up their belongings, Dan filled in the plan. Now their goal would be to make Harry so behind that he wouldn't go first in the third task and therefore wouldn't win. They only had to hold him off just long enough.
It won't be long. Sirius has it all worked out. We only waited mere moments for you last time.
They disappeared in their swimming gear with Sirius's rucksack. A moment or two later, the door swung open, and down the stairs came a woman. The lady looked familiar, but hard to place how. She had a slightly etched face with a couple of graying hairs amidst the black. She walked almost all the way down to them when one of them finally recognized her and gasped.
Katie?
Yes, Dan, I am Katie. You must stop this. You must stop it before you change too much.
And Katie vanished like a vapor. And that is the end of Act 3. And we're going to push on for sake of time. Act 4.
That's okay. I have no idea what's going on. So.
Yeah, I'm losing it.
It's okay. Sirius and Katie, the 17-year-old Katie, then came climbing down the stairs, breathless.
I almost lost her, but I went back, pulled her from a few moments before we were separated. What? What's wrong with Ollie? What happened?
They explained what they had just seen, an older Katie in her mid-40s, the one he had left behind.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate,
Sirius said as he sat down.
Unfortunate? I lived an entire life in secret because of this?
You didn't, though. I saved you.
Someone did, though. This is over. I'm returning the time turner.
We're not done yet. We haven't saved him.
Save him? He's not worth it, Sirius.
Didn't you see how difficult it was to stop Harry from getting to the bottom of the lake? Or in the third task when he went back to save you, Andromeda? Imagine that kind of determination against Voldemort.
Sirius stood up.
We can do this. The first task. All we have to do is lock up his broom. Easy in, easy out.
There was a long pause. Then Andromeda stood up.
Let's get this over with.
They stood up, threw on the time turner, and soon vanished. Katie laid down on the couch, and the rest of them tried to recuperate with what they had just seen. Doing a change of location real quick. They stood up, threw on the time turner, and soon vanished. Katie laid down on the couch, and the rest of them tried to recuperate with what they had just seen. In Malfoy Manor, Draco was pacing fast, and his father stood on a grand tall chair nearby.
Where else could they have gone, Father? It's happened. Sirius is in with Yaxley and Runcorn.
I think you're forgetting your daughter. Would Sirius ever put her in that kind of harm's way? Would Andromeda ever go with that plan? They have to have another angle.
Just then, a faint crack sounded the appearance of Hermione. She bursted in the room.
How? Why?
I can explain.
I get an owl saying our kids stole a time turner that shouldn't exist, and now they're somewhere in the past.
Yes, but...
Of all people, why would you keep it? I understand Lucius.
Hermione pointed a stern finger in Lucius's direction.
But why wouldn't you destroy it?
Because I guess I thought one day I'd use it.
To save Harry? Come on, Draco, you know what happened. You know it can't be done.
To save us.
Draco said it in a quiet, very hushed voice, barely above a murmur, but enough for the three of them to hear it.
I'll be taking my leave now,
Lucius said as he rose and bade himself from the room.
Draco, I don't know what to say. No.
Just forget I mentioned it. I kept it and I shouldn't have. Now, how do we rescue our kids? That's all that matters.
We can't. They're gone, all of them. Unless you happen to know any other magical keepsakes passed down in pureblood families just waiting to tear about reality.
Fresh out of those.
Hermione chuckled in spite of herself and the situation they found themselves in. Suddenly, a Jack Russell Terrier flew in through the wall. Ron's voice echoed from his Patronus. We found the conspirators. All of them. Come to the Shrieking Shack. The former couple apparated into Hogsmeade, Draco first, Hermione a second later.
Do you think...
They have the kids? Let's hope so.
The Shrieking Shack was more worn and shabby than ever. Dean and I caught them unawares. They had a secondary tunnel they created connecting them to the forest. Every time we came to check, they had a sneaker scope go off and they retreated back into the tunnel. Dean and I thought something was suspicious, so we came up on broomsticks with disillusion charms and caught them.
Are our children here?
And Hermione asked. She had not said our children in several years. Who? Sirius? Andromeda? No, they must be at the castle, aren't they? In school? Draco and Hermione filled Ron in with details of Sirius and Andromeda running off with the time turner, him gaping and gasping more and more as they went. Oh, I swear, you two should have never had kids. Too smart for their own good they are, especially your boy. But he's not with them.
How do you know?
They were making their own time turner. He gestured them into a room where many different magical instruments were in active use. A baby cradle in the corner, a wheelchair in the other corner. Clearly, their process of making a time turner was not without its obstacles. Supposed to be so disastrous should you fail from what an unspeakable told me. It's why they deemed the effort of making more not worth it. But these ones really wanted their master back, I suppose. Draco held up the completed former Death Eater's new time turner.
Draco, surely not.
Were the Death Eaters intact, Ron? In their right minds? The right ages?
Yes, but they hadn't tested it fully. I think they were packing up for the big trip right when Dean and I apprehended them. Don't even think about it.
Anything for our kids. Right, Minister?
Draco had shifted back into formality following the moment from before. Hermione brushed past it and simply said,
Yes, I'm ready.
Draco smiled in grim agreement.
All right. Do you remember how to use it?
Yes.
Hermione swung the necklace around both of their necks. She started to turn the hourglass.
You know, who was the last person I used a time turner with?
Who?
Harry Potter.
And they disappeared. They reappeared in the Shrieking Shack, void of Ron and his team of investigators, but otherwise the same shabby, broken place. The damages Hermione and Draco knowingly attached to Remus Lupin in his werewolf form.
When are we?
4th year, first task. It's the first place I thought of looking.
I think you're right. It's probably where they'd start.
They made their way to the stadium in the forest. Early on, they cast disillusionment charms on themselves. They kept their eyes peeled, not on the competitors attempting to seize eggs from their dragons, but for their 2 children. Harry entered the stadium last. They waited with bated breath.
He's going to summon his firebolt from Sirius. You missed this last time, Hermione. He does a great deal of flying here in a second.
Draco, focus on the kids.
I am. I'm looking at the target, aren't I?
Harry dived, struggled, and was almost singed. He flicked his wand in a precise motion and said,
Accio Firebolt!
The audience gasped in anticipation, but nothing came. Draco began to shift.
It was here faster last time. Oh, they didn't. So crude.
What?
They took his broom. Must have.
Without a second thought, Draco stood up and said quietly with the exact same flick of his wand,
Accio Nimbus 2001.
Draco, no!
I'm not losing my old friend to a dragon, the Dark Lord. Nothing more, nothing less.
Before Draco's trusty old Nimbus came to him, he flicked his wand again to send it to the stadium, straight to Harry.
We weren't much friends those days, but he'll think I gave him a leg up or something for old time's sake. He'll think some Gryffindors locked up the firebolt, and technically one did. Come on, let's find our kids.
On the other side of the stadium, Sirius stood, stunned.
That should have worked. No.
Sirius dropped to his knees again, as they again gave Harry first place.
Sirius, let's go back.
No, I'm not going back empty-handed. I must save him.
No, you mustn't. Leave him be. Let destiny win for a day. We can't tamper anymore. You said that.
Not with the tournament, but we can still save him. Get him out of the tournament entirely.
They arrived to the room of requirement in the present to find it empty. The rest of the order had given up.
I'll do this myself. Stay, will you?
Sirius turned the time turner. Andromeda watched as he disappeared. She sat silently waiting. The Sirius that returned was even more crazed than he had been the time before.
I tried everything. Tailed Harry for a month, tailed Barty Crouch Jr. as well as I could without him catching me, switched the notes, entered Mom.
Sirius.
Still Harry, every time. He must not enter himself. Got to take him out and personate him.
No, Sirius, that's wrong. And it may still not work.
Right? But what if he wouldn't enter?
What?
Asked Andromeda exasperately.
What if Harry did not go into Slytherin?
Asked Sirius. When Andromeda looked even more confused, Sirius continued.
Think about it. Harry joined up with Dad and joined Slytherin. But what if he made another choice? What if he followed in his parents' footsteps and chose Gryffindor?
You can't choose a house, Sirius.
You did. You told me. The Sorting Hat took your choice into account.
That was different.
Was it? Come on, we can still do it. We can save Harry Potter.
Andromeda said,
This could change everything, Sirius.
A worthwhile risk. I already know what to do. Come on.
They went to 1991. They had made their way down through the empty castle, hopped on the empty Hogwarts Express, and waited in a compartment. When their father was strutting his way down, Sirius silently bumped him toward the compartment where Harry and Ron, before he ditched him, were sitting. At first, their 11-year-old father was frustrated.
Crap, watch it.
But then he saw the passengers in the compartment.
Wait, watch this.
He stepped in and introduced himself to Harry Potter and said,
Freckles, red hair, dirt on your nose. You must be a Weasley.
He walked away with Crabbe and Goyle. Sirius and Andromeda waited. At the steps of the hallway, Draco offered glory and honor in Slytherin, putting out his hand to shake Harry's. They waited, with bated breath. Harry responded,
I think I can find the right sword for myself, thanks.
He said coolly. Sirius and Andromeda snuck around and through the doors to their great hall behind Mr. Filch. They waited patiently as they were all sorted. They saw their mother put on the hat, a small delay, and then the hat shouted,
Gryffindor!
They watched the hat barely even grace their father's blonde head before shouting,
Slytherin!
A few students later, Harry Potter took the stage. He seemed to be contemplating and thinking hard. Andromeda understood immediately, as she had done the same thing only 2 years before, or in other words, 26 years from now. Another pause, and the sorting hat said,
Well then, better be Gryffindor!
We did it, Drom. Let's go.
They stepped into the great hall while the students of old were feasting.
Well, Andromeda, we did it. Where should we go first in our better world? How do we know?
Andromeda thought for a moment and then said,
I want to go to my first time at King's Cross, where we met again.
That's good. And if any luck, Harry will be there with kids of his own.
They got under the necklace of the time turner and began turning. Autumn seemed to arrive suddenly that year. The morning of the 1st of September was crisp as an apple, and as the little family bobbed across the rumbling road toward the great city station, the fumes of car exhausts and the breath of the pedestrian sparkled like cobwebs in the cold air. 2 large cages tattled on top of the laden trolleys the parents were pushing. The owls inside them hooted indignantly, and the red-headed girl trailed fearfully behind her brothers, clutching her father's arm.
It won't be long, and you'll be going too,
Harry told her.
2 years?
Sniffed Lily.
I want to go now.
The commuters stared curiously at the owls as the family wove its way through the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Albus's voice drifted back to Harry over the surrounding clamor. His sons had resumed the argument they had started in the car.
I won't be a Slytherin.
James, give it a rest,
said Ginny.
I only said he might be,
said James, grinning at his younger brother.
There's nothing wrong with that. He might be in Slytherin.
But James caught his mother's eye and fell silent. The 5 Potters approached the barrier. With a slightly cocky look over his shoulder at his younger brother, James took the trolley from his mother and broke into a run. A moment later, he had vanished.
You'll write to me, won't you?
Albus asked his parents immediately, capitalizing on the momentary absence of his brother.
Every day, if you want us to,
said Ginny.
Not every day,
said Albus quickly.
James said most people only get letters from home about once a month.
We wrote to James 3 times a week last year,
said Ginny.
And you don't want to believe everything he tells you about Hogwarts. He likes to laugh, your brother.
Side by side, they pushed the second trolley forward, gathering speed. As they reached the barrier, Albus winced, but no collision came. Instead, the family emerged onto platform 9 3/4, which was obscured by thick white steam that was pouring from the Scarlet Hogwarts Express. Indistinct figures were swarming through the mist, into which James had already disappeared.
Where are they?
Asked Albus anxiously, peering at the hazy forms they passed as they made their way down the platform.
We'll find them.
But the vapor was dense, and it was difficult to make out anybody's faces. Detached from their owners, voices sound unnaturally loud. Harry thought he had heard Percy discoursing loudly on broomstick regulations, and was quite glad of the excuse to not stop and say hello.
I think that's them, Al.
A group of 4 people emerged from the mist, standing alongside the very last carriage. Their faces only came into focus when Harry, Ginny, Lily, and Albus had drawn right up to them.
Hi.
said Albus, sounding immensely relieved. Rose, who was already wearing her brand new scarlet Hogwarts robes, beamed at him. Parked all right then? Ron asked Harry. I did. Hermione didn't believe I could pass a Muggle driving test, did you? She thought I'd have to confound the examiner.
No, I didn't. I had complete faith in you.
As a matter of fact, I did confront him, Ron whispered to Harry as they together lifted Albus's trunk and owl onto the train. I only forgot to look in the wing there, and let's face it, I can use a suspensory charm for that. Andromeda Granger and Sirius Malfoy looked at each other and screamed.
What the?
And that concludes Andromeda Granger and the Lost Prophecy.
Are you kidding me? Is that how you're ending it? Like, for real?
Just dabbed.
Is that for real how you're ending this?
That's it.
What the? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What did you do?
Oh no.
It was the only way I could up the ante. Cole and I have just been waiting for so long. That last part is literally just the epilogue. Word for word. It's the world's longest retcon of all time.
Oh.
So remember when I said at the beginning that this idea came from me texting Cole as a joke?
Mm-hmm. Oh my god.
David's speechless. I think I broke him. That's why I was wanting to do it so bad. I wanted to get you guys so bad. But Cole didn't know any of the middle bits. He just knew the end.
I have a confession to make. I haven't listened to the previous 2 episodes, so I was a smidge lost, but we just pushed through.
I'm proud of you,
There
Cole.
you go.
I'm going to listen to them tomorrow on my way to work.
Yeah, there are some alternate universe changes and stuff like that. I think the main
Yeah,
part
I
you were
figured that
missing-
one out.
Yeah, and the main part you were missing was that Harry Potter died and got
No,
fired.
I knew
But
that
you
because
didn't
I
know that.
helped write it.
Yeah, that's right. You did know that. David's still broken.
Yeah, he is.
The long episode was worth it. Because I didn't want to cut it.
Oh, so good. David's still lost for words.
I'm just waiting. I want him to say something, but it was a pretty good story, I believe.
David always has opinions on everything, and you've just left him. So.
I'd like to make one change. I would like to have had Hagrid in there somewhere, and because I would have done a darn good Hagrid voice.
Well,
I
do
think I
believe
was.
that.
I made attempts to write him in, but I thought Cole did a really great job with Lucius Malfoy, the Sorting Hat.
Fantastic.
He did
Really good stuff.
phenomenal.
Spot on
He did a
Sorting
great
Hat.
I
job.
think he told
Yeah.
me I was going to be Lucius, so I already had that one in my head.
Mm.
Like, okay, what do I want Lucius to sound like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is why I'm not a voice actor, because I was able to do an older mom voice and a younger girl voice, but then after that, all the voices sounded the same.
I thought you did a great job.
Yeah.
Your Katie voice was distinct. And that was my favorite part about this too, was like I didn't even think of writing. I was like, oh crap. I can't use any of the characters from the original Harry Potter, the Cursed Child, because all of the kids are going to be different or not exist. So Sirius Malfoy and Andromeda Granger were genuinely fun characters to write, because it was like, and I don't know if you even caught this, but Andromeda is more like Draco and Sirius is more like Hermione. So it was this definitely became a
It became a what?
He is frozen, like Elsa.
and now
And
now
David's
I've broken
muted,
the internet
so
as well.
maybe that's why we couldn't ever hear David, because he's on mute.
He's still muted.
Am I muted?
Now you're
No,
back.
now you're good.
Okay. All right. Oh. Spencer, this is probably the greatest thing you've ever done. This is the greatest thing you've ever done.
I
And that includes Ida.
And here's why.
well-
And here's why.
Does not include iron.
I think that Cursed Child should never have really existed ever. Because as soon as the Cursed Child started, it completely went back on the idea of, and Harry Potter's scar had not hurt him or something along those lines. It's been a long time since it hurt him, right?
Oh.
So then you get a story to where in a couple of years things happen and that's not true anymore. And that just never sat right with me. And so the idea that there is a way, even though you meant it as a joke, but a way for the Cursed Child to be a story about an alternate universe that ends up collapsing within itself is pretty cool.
So Cole and I had this debate, and I decided just to leave it open-ended. Do Andromeda and Sirius disappear Back to the Future style, or do they have to find a way to live in this new universe? And I decided both of those were too difficult to write or too sad, so I just Spider-Man Homecoming did.
It did. It's very much with Spider-Man Homecoming, which I'm gonna be honest here. It was a little weird for me. I'm not gonna lie. It's a little weird to end it in the way
you gotta
did.
Think how shocked they would be to see their mom with Ron and different kids.
Sure.
And then Harry Potter with Ginny.
Sure. But I don't know if they would have said that as they end it. But all things aside,
what else are you gonna do?
I mean,
yeah. Anyway,
I mean, fitting for how we ended it.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely how I felt when I read
I felt
that.
Also, I felt like that was also a bit of that too.
Absolutely. But this was wild. Because you really made me go through the emotions on how it ended. Because at first I was mad at you. I was very, very upset because I was just like, I wasted an hour on a story that basically was just like, oh, nope, none of this ever happened. We're going to go back to the original timeline and the way things go. Like I was really mad at you. But then the more that I thought about it, the more I was just like, this is what needed to happen. This is what needed to happen.
Yeah, I brought it all back. I brought it all back to
basics, all back full circle.
I brought it back full circle.
It's incredible. Honestly, I will say this, and this will be the last thing, and then you can end the show because we've already gone on long enough.
Seriously.
But what I will say is this. This entire series, the Hermione Granger series, from part 1 to part 2 to part 3, which is this. Max, pick it up. We'll do our own what if series. This is phenomenal. This is amazing. This is top tier quality storytelling work. It's fantastic.
The other ones are more pitchy. This one's actually like fully scripted out and written. Sure. So I would not publish anything but this one. But I'm sorry, it is very long. I just got into my writing mode.
He got into his bag and just went for it. He really got into his bag.
I pulled my arm into the undetectable extension charmed bag of writing. And my only last thing to say is, what a way to kick off the season.
Absolutely. I'm excited for this episode to drop. This is going to be phenomenal.
This is why I wanted to start with this one. I thought it'd be fun for the listeners and stuff. So we have amazing season prepped for you. We're going to get into the movies next week. We're going to do Sorcerer's Stone. Next week, whenever this releases, the next week after this episode releases, we'll be getting to the Sorcerer's Stone and the movie series, which is going to be a wild task. We haven't even started to think about how we're going to approach that rewatch series, but it's going to be really fun. And what a watching Harry Potter in fall is the best time. And so, to watch it. And so I'm really excited to do that. So thank you so much for listening. If you're still here after the long episode, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed the 3-part Hermione Granger series. It was a pleasure of mine to write it. It was really fun. And this one specifically really meant a lot to me. So even though it was entirely a joke and a retcon, I still had a lot of fun writing the bits and
phenomenal.
bobs of how to
It's
get
so
from getting from point A to point Z was crazy. So
Yeah.
But yeah,
Nuts.
we'll see you next time for the Sorcerer's Stone and the Harry Potter rewatch. On behalf of David, Abby, and Cole, this has been a Show of Requirement episode. Mischief managed.